Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where dawn's first light glints off iron axes and crackling torches, and you probably won't survive this without at least a few missing fingernails. You're yanked from your snug peat-roofed longhouse, the smell of last night's porridge still warm on your breath, hurled into chaos by shouting warriors whose faces gleam in the half-light. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the chat so we know where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the tangle of fir and birch heart, pounding as wolf-like battle cries bounce off mossy stones. Your bare feet slip in the dew, and your hands, once calloused by farm toil, tremble as you hear the clatter of shields and the crack of bows firing overhead. Mainstream historians note that Viking slave raids began in earnest by the late 8th century, when small war bands struck coastal monasteries and farmsteads to snatch the living and sometimes the gold back to Norse markets. Historians still argue whether those early raids were driven more by revenge or by the lure of foreign riches. You taste the iron tang of panic on your tongue and wonder if you'll ever see your younger sister's braid again. A fringe saga whispers that some captives once tried to slip free by covering themselves in pig fat to mimic sea otters, hoping raiders would pass them by, though no practical traveler ever confirmed such a slippery escape. As you stumble over a gnarled root, you curse under your breath. Maybe otter impersonation works better when you're, actually an otter. Joke one, at least otters don't wrap themselves in sheep pelts and call it fashion. Your captors force you to kneel at a muddy stream bank where water drips from your tangled hair into your defeated eyes. The war band's leader, his beard black as raven wings, inspects you like a merchant examining scraps of cloth. He mutters in Old Norse, a language that you only half understand, but the baring of teeth sends no doubt your way. You swallow hard, recalling how Viking sagas brag of selling thralls at markets in Dublin and Constantinople, the same markets where your name now slides between filthy coins. Whether those long-distance sales were organized by aristocratic chieftains or by freebooting merchants remains a heated topic among scholars. The morning breeze is cold enough to sting exposed skin, mixing sweat and fear into a bracing tonic. You fumble for your battered leather pouch, once your coin purse, now the only piece of home you've managed to hang on to, and roll it between your fingers. Joke 2 flits through your mind. If I trade this for a loaf of rye, will I at least get a bed instead of a barn corner to sleep in? The thought is almost comforting until you remember how far you still have to go before anyone welcomes you anyway. Your fellow prisoners, a mix of villagers, monks, and the occasional wayward merchant, shiver in the underbrush, their eyes hollow mirrors reflecting your own dread. You share fleeting glances, but no words. Speech is a luxury when your voice might earn you an extra lash. Among them, a hulking farmer from a nearby valley braces against a spear shaft as if it were a prayer staff. His knuckles bleed from gripping it too tightly. You offer him a timid nod, solidarity flickering between you like a candle flame in this damp dawn. Behind you, the raiders heft wooden frames and hoist nets, makeshift litters for the weak and wounded. You catch a glimpse of one captive, a half-grown lad strapped upside down so his boots brush against the muddy ground. The boy's wild eyes meet yours for a heartbeat. You blink away tears, reminding yourself that panic is a friendless companion. Historians still debate whether medieval Norse laws offered any path to freedom for thralls, or if manumission was purely at a master's whim. A horn rasp echoes from the coastline, carried inland by mist-laden wind. It's a signal to mount for the final push to the longship waiting ashore, its oaken hull etched with runes and water darkened from salt spray. You force your legs to rise, muscles trembling like birch sap in thaw. Your captors shift forward, spears resting on shoulders as they bark orders in clipped, grim voices. Each step crunches on frosted moss and brittle twigs, each breath a silent prayer you don't say out loud. Joke 3. If I survive this, I'm definitely learning that rune, for I told you so. The forest thins into rock and sand, the shoreline's pale dunes shimmering with salt. You peer ahead, spotting sleek ships with dragon-proud stems cutting through silver waves. Your life now hinges on those vessels, floating prisons, floating arenas, floating carriers of fate. Whether you'll trade your hands for oars, your strength for spells of servitude, or somehow carve a path back home remains a question only the gods can answer. And as the warband's war cry swells, you trudge onward, every step carrying you further from the world you knew, into the brutal life awaiting any Viking slave. You wake to the creak of timbers and the slap of waves against the hull's salt-laced air, stinging your nostrils as you realize you're not on solid ground anymore. You're shackled to a low bench in the belly of a Viking gnar, the long ship's stout oaken ribs rising overhead like the underbelly of some great beast. The hold smells of brine, bitumen, and the sour sweat of 50 terrified captives. You clamp your teeth against a gasp as the ship heels in a swell, and you probably won't survive this crossing without a bruised rib or two. Your wrists chafe raw against iron shackles that clink in time with the rowers' chant, I heim, a rhythmic call that echoes through the hold like a war chant underwater. Mainstream scholars note that by the 9th century, Viking slave traders regularly transported thralls across the North Sea in gnars, the same sturdy cargo ships used for furs, walrus, ivory, and grain. Historians still argue whether these thrall-laden vessels were more likely to capsize under heavy load or simply become floating coffins when storms slammed the decks. You taste the coppery tang of blood from a cut on your palm, souvenir of yesterday's scramble to fetch water from that muddy stream. Beneath the bench, another captive coughs violently, his ragged breath rattling like dry bones. A fringe rumor floats among thralls that some desperate souls dyed their hair with seaweed to resemble drowned mermaids, hoping their captors would fear a supernatural omen and toss them back into the waves. You bite your lip. Apparently, mermaid cosplay wasn't part of your escape plan. Joke 1, if only I'd applied a dash of kelp conditioner. The rowers' oars dip and rise in perfect unison each stroke, sending a thunderclap of water against the ship's side. You crane your neck upward to glimpse a narrow slit of sky, smeared periwinkle at dawn, then duck as a wave crashes over the gunwale. Water rushes down the deck, snaking toward the hatch where you're confined. You scramble to brace yourself, hitting your head on the bench and muttering an expletive in a language only your exhausted self can understand. Above you, hear the captain's voice booming in guttural, Old Norse row, row. Let no man falter. You flinch, recalling the black-bearded leader from the raid, the one who inspected your coins like prized apples. You wonder if he'd mind trading one of your few remaining dirhams for a pair of dry socks. Joke two, a small price for something that doesn't smell like drowned sheep. The ship pitches again, and you glimpse pale green foam swirling beneath an oarlock. You press a trembling hand against the hull, feeling the grain of aged oak and the tar that seals its seams. This vessel, built for open seas, now carries human cargo, whose fate depends on each plank holding firm. You shiver not from cold, but from the knowledge that thralls were considered expendable, only cargo weight, to be balanced against profit. You swallow hard, wondering if your body will ever grace dry land again. Someone 2 benches over begins to sing a mournful dirge in Gaelic, their cracked voice rising above the slosh of water. The melody is haunting like seabirds crying at the horizon. You close your eyes and let the notes wash over you, a reminder that freedom sings in more tongues than your captors use. Historians still argue whether such spontaneous song served as silent rebellion or simply as comfort in the face of despair. You hum the tune softly, a secret song of hope you tuck away for darker watches. The deck above groans as a swell lifts the Nar's stern. You feel your shackle chain tighten, biting into your skin. You try to slide your hand free, but the iron link holds fast. You remember the river, crossing the terror of near drowning by rapids, the humiliating plunge into freezing water that nearly turned you into an ice statue. Compared to that, the sea feels endless and merciless. Yet the rapids raged for minutes. This crossing could stretch for days. A beam of dawn light cracks through the hatch, illuminating droplets that hang like crystal beads on your sweating brow. You lean forward, peering at the feet of a shield maiden patrolling above her leather greaves stained with fish guts from last night's salted herring. She pauses, snarls at a runaway thrall, and cracks her whipwood meeting leather in a thunderous report. You flinch heart, thundering, thankful you're below deck and out of sight, though not out of danger. Your stomach grumbles, reminding you that you haven't eaten since a stale biscuit half a day ago. You reach for your belt pouch empty. You close your eyes and imagine a loaf of fresh rye steam curling in the coastal air crumbs, dusting your palm, maybe on some other sea in some other life. You open your eyes to the dim hold iron shackles and the damp smell of fear. A joke flits through your head. If I daydream any harder, I'll end up seasick. Time stretches like a soggy sail. You count the rhythmic thrusts of oars, 7, 8, 9, wondering if the ship follows a set course or drifts with each capricious current. A distant gull cries, and you press your ear to the hull, imagining its cry as a signal, land, land. But the gull circles overhead, never descending. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve, tasting grit from yesterday's forced labor. At least the sea gives no commands beyond row. Suddenly the chant above changes, pace faster, urgent. You scramble to your feet, stumbling in your shackles. A shout rings out storm. You hear timbers creak and sails snap taut. A massive wave looms beyond the gunwale, a dark green monster poised to engulf you. You grip the bench in terror nails biting into the wood and wonder if you'll drown bound in these irons or crash into mangled planks. And then the swell breaks harmlessly against the next wave, leaving only foam and relief. The rowers grunt and dip their oars in renewed effort. You exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding, sweat mixing with salt on your cheeks. A fringed tale drifts to your mind that once a thrall managed to slip free in a storm by picking the lock of his manacle with a fishbone, though most scholars dismiss it as fanciful myth. You tug at your shackle, testing its bite, and imagine all the fish bones you've swallowed in your life. Joke 3. Maybe those dinner bones hold a hidden key. The chant settles into a weary lullaby, and you sink back onto the bench, eyes closing as the ship sways. You feel every swell and dip like the heartbeat of the sea itself. The Viking traders believe the ocean is a living god, Aegir, whose mood swings can drown kings and beggars alike. As you drift between consciousness and fear, you wonder if Aegir hears your silent prayer for dry land, for a chance to trade your chains for plowshares, or at least a loaf of rye. Above, footsteps fade, and the deck returns to routine hustle, oars dipping, sails flapping, and the creaking of ropes under salt's strain. You press your palm to the bench, feeling the warmth of wood that has held together countless voyages. You lean back, chin against the shackle, and let the lull of the sea carry you halfway toward sleep, knowing that when you wake, the horizon might still be empty, but your will remains unbroken. You stagger from the hold into blinding daylight eyes, squinting as you find yourself in a dusty market square ringed by timber stalls and slatted pens. The roar of shouting merchants hits you like a gale. By Odin's beard, more slaves for sale. Who'll bid you're shoved forward, the rough planks of a raised wooden block beneath your knees, and the collective gaze of the town's freeborn bearing down like sharpened spears. You kneel hood, slipping from your tangled hair, revealing a bruise blooming purple on your cheek. A trader slams a hammer against a sealed oak chest, 10 silver pennies clang inside, echoing over the throngs. Mainstream records tell us that Viking slave markets thrived at annual fairs in places like Kaupang and Dublin by the 9th century, drawing buyers from near and far to barter human cargo alongside herring and walrus ivory. Historians still argue whether these fairs were primarily economic hubs or also served social and legal functions. But either way, your fate now hinges on the next bid. A flute skirls its welcome lament from a nearby minstrel, a fringe habit some towns adopted, hiring musicians to serenade arriving captive lots, perhaps to mask the moral dissonance of trading flesh. You taste bile as the melody drifts through you, a stark counterpoint to the clamor of commerce. Joke 1, if only they played nursery rhymes instead, at least I could swaddle my panic in childhood memories. A burly buyer in teal mantle steps forward, brandishing a sack of copper dirhams that glint in the noon sun. He circles you like a falcon, inspecting your taut wrists and hollow eyes. You can practically hear his thoughts: strong limbs young, value enough. A second merchant clad in saffron and bearing a wicker basket of curled amber beads raises a single finger a bid. The crowd ripples voices rising like storm wind. You swallow hard, remembering that some slaves in Norse lore carried secret marks, brands of loyalty burned into their shoulders so future buyers would know their origins. Fringe whispers suggest a covert network of freed thralls reading these brands to track lost kin. But most scholars dismiss such tales as saga embroidery. You shift on your knees, hoping your unmarked back will fetch a better price than branded cargo. The auctioneer's voice booms, "Do I hear 1515 for the strong one?" He slams the gavel again, sending a tremor through your chest. You glimpse the chess weaver in the crowd, her keen eyes locked on you, offering a flicker of empathy before she's pulled back by a guard. Your throat tightens. Solidarity tastes like ashes. A voice from the crowd. 20 for the heathen slave. The copper coins leap onto the platform, baptizing you in cold metal. You clamp your jaw to stop the tremor in your chin. A joke, too, drifts in despite your dread. At least someone finally gave me change for my thoughts. As bids climb, you recall that Viking law codes sometimes allowed thralls to earn their freedom by paying a fixed wergild to their master, a manumission price set by social rank. Historians still debate whether such prices were ever achievable for most captives or remained a theoretical liberty few could afford. You glance at the raising hands, none offering a path to freedom, only to deeper bondage. Sunlight glints on a merchant's iron brooch as he interjects another 10 coins, lifting the bid to 30. The auctioneer raps the gavel and calls sold to the trader from Hedeby. A cord snaps around your ankle, clamps tighten. You stand, legs trembling, as a wiry man in russet breeches steps forward to claim you. He sniffs like inspecting livestock, then grips your shoulder. You wince, half expecting bone to snap under his strength. He leads you to a stall draped in dyed fabrics where other thralls await branding and distribution. A scribe in indigo robes tallies your sale in a ledger, while scribes dip quills into ink pots chained to tables. The smell of ink and tanned hide fills the air, mingling with sweat and fear. You catch the merchant's eye, his gaze flicks over your back, rakes your scars, and settles on your wrists. You offer a faint nod, no words left. He whisks a small iron brand in molten tar toward a brazier. Your breath catches. Branding irons were rumored in fringe tales to carry runic symbols that marked a slave's owner for life. Whether those runes held magical sway or simply denoted property remains a point of contention among rune scribes. You brace as the iron glows, thinking of that hidden rune carved into your childhood playhouse. But instead of burning, the merchant tosses the iron back and binds your wrists with fresh leather straps. "We spare the brand today," he growls. "You'll learn the cost of upkeep soon enough." You release a breath-scorching flesh, at least was not today's torment. A joke, 3 lucky me, my skin keeps its spotless reputation. He drags you toward the market's edge, where a rowing longship bobs ready to carry you to new fields of labor. You step over fallen straw and spilled wheat, each grain a silent witness to your sale. The sun dips low shadows, stretching as you mount the ship's ramp under his booted command. As you clamber aboard the once distant sea, now beckons once more its horizon. No promise of freedom, but the next chapter of servitude. You turn briefly to the marketplace, still thrumming with life merchants, calling for seals, haggling over spices, and collecting debts. Your name has slipped from their tongues, replaced by slave or thrall, a new identity, carved by others. You settle in the ship's hold once more, heart hammering with the memory of clanging coins and hungry bidders. The clamor fades behind you as the hull creaks and the oars dip into calm water. You trace a finger over the ledger's tally holding your sale price, yet your spirit, unpriced and unbroken, drifts above the ship like a silent spectator. And so, you sail onward bound by iron and circumstance, yet carrying within you the ember of hope that someday your freedom might ring louder than any gavel. You wake before the pale glow of dawn bleeds into the sky, shoulders stiff from yesterday's toil, and realize you're the first thrall stirring in the longhouse yard. Frost clings like tiny crystals to the turf underfoot, pricking your bare toes as you stumble toward the peat stacks. Your breath puffs in silver clouds, and already the master's shout cuts through the morning hush. Move, dog of slavery. You shoulder a sod of turf heavy as a defeated shield and trudge toward the turf bank. Mainstream sources note that Viking houses used turf roofs insulated by layers of sod and heather, requiring regular replacement. Thralls often did this back-breaking work before sunrise. Historians still argue whether turf harvesting was communal labor shared by free and unfree alike, or strictly the thrall's burden. But either way today, it's your burden. Frost-stiff peat clings to your palms as you heft each block, stacking them neatly in a line that stretches from the barn to the roof ladders. Your fingers ache as if each frost-bitten groove gouges tiny canyons into your skin. A fringed tale whispers that some resourceful slaves rolled peat in animal fat to ease handling. But most practical farmers sneered at such dilution of fuel quality. You bite your lip, at least my hands are greased for friendship, if not for warmth. Joke one, nothing says good morning like a peat-scented handshake. Behind you, the chess weaver, her hand still trembling from yesterday's auction, pulls up a sod and tosses it with delicate precision. You marvel at her strength. She once retrieved a fallen knight from beneath a drifting dune, yet here she is lifting turf like a warlord hoisting battle flags. You elbow her gently. Trade me your carriage of strength for my pair of wimpy arms. She smirks, frost sparkle catching in her lashes, and returns to her pile. Once the peat is stacked, you trudge to the well, an ancient stone-lined shaft sunk deep into earth, its walls slick with centuries of moisture. You lower a wooden bucket, its rope creaking like an old man's joints, and haul up water that smells of moss and clay. Mainstream chronicles record that Viking Age wells were often communal and vital lifelines in frigid lands, though historians still debate whether their ownership lay with chieftains or with freeholds. You gulp the first sip, tepid and earthy, forgetting your thirst, but not the chill that snakes down your spine. You fill a second bucket for the livestock, careful not to spill a drop. A stray hoof print mars the frost, and a cow lowing in the barn reminds you of yesterday's near miss, when the bull nearly gore-checked you for a soggy flank. A joke two surfaces, at least bulls, don't negotiate with coins or run raids at dawn. You hoist the water its weight, pulling you forward, and stagger toward the barn. Inside, the cattle low and huddle warm breath steaming in the half-light. You slosh the water into wooden troughs, the clatter echoing off beams. A cow nudges you for more, its velvet nose brushing your sleeve. You pat its flank, savoring a moment of gentle contact before the next command. Historians still argue whether thralls were allowed small acts of kindness to animals, or if they were driven as brutally as chariot horses. But today, kindness feels like smuggling a stolen loaf of bread. Back outside the firemaker, an old thrall with a face mapped by wrinkles strikes flint to steel sparks dancing into a nest of kindling. You gather dried twigs stiff with frost and feed the tiny flames until they swell into a hearth crackle. Mainstream accounts note that hearth fires were central to Norse family life and often tended by thralls. Whether thralls shared in the fire's warmth or merely stoked it for their masters is a matter of debate among archaeologists. You cup your hands to the glow, tasting the fruit of someone else's labor. With chores done, you trudge to the longhouse door, steam rising from your body like a phantom escort. The master's wife awaits, doling out breakfast, a lump of barley porridge and a thin slice of butter that melts into greasy ribbons. You swallow it because hunger hits harder than cold. A stray oat crunches against a missing tooth, reminder of childhood milk teeth lost to too many hardtack stubs. You grin wryly. Low fat was never an option here. Then the master appears, mounted on a small horse, his cloak of dyed wool snapping in the wind. He surveys his domain, smoke curling from chimneys, thralls ambling between chores, livestock grazing in frost-flattened fields, and smirks like a god overlooking mortals. He barks orders to grooms who wheel out riding horses for the free warriors. One of them eyes you, then spurs his steed to a trot, leaving hoof prints in the snow that glisten like promises you can't keep. You fall in behind the master and his retinue carrying a yoke of wooden buckets. A wind gust snatches your hood, and you press your fingers to your hair, tangled enough without frost coating. A joke 3 drifts in, at least I won't be mistaken for a free archer with this headgear. You trudge on each step, a testament to thrall's silent endurance. As the retinue rides off toward the fields beyond the ridge, you join the barn hands lifting bales of straw for bedding and heaving feed sacks for the pigs. The day's labor stretches before you like a gauntlet of muscle and bone, yet beneath the weight of chores and commands, a quiet resolve hums in your chest. You survive the auction block. You can survive another dawn of chores. The sun climbs higher, melting frost into muddy rills, and in the swirl of labor's dust, you find a rhythm: stoop, lift, carry, repeat. Each motion carves calluses deeper, each breath a reminder that survival here demands more than strength. It demands acceptance of the unyielding wheel of work. Historians still debate whether thralls ever gained status through loyalty and skill, but for now, you hold your dignity in silent cadence, waiting for the moment when strength and cunning may grant you the possibility of freedom. You trudge into the open fields, the sun climbing, as if to test your resolve, and find yourself yoked to an ox team. as dawn's chill melts into searing heat. The plow's iron tip bites into the soil, sending turned earth tumbling in the dark clods at your feet. You grip the wooden handles until your palms sting, hoping each furrow you carve brings you one step closer to the evening's scant rest. Mainstream sources indicate that Viking Age agriculture relied heavily on thralls for plowing heavy clay soils with oxen teams harnessed in pairs to share the burden labor that free farmers often avoided. Historians still argue whether this reliance on unfree labor accelerated agricultural expansion in Scandinavia or merely entrenched social hierarchies that stifled innovation. You push your shoulders into the beam, matching the oxen's slow, steady pull, and wonder if hardship counts as innovation in some scholars' eyes. The ground resists like a wounded beast, roots tangling around the blade. Sweat beads on your brow, dripping into your eyes like tiny stones. You blink them away, tasting salt and soil. A fringe lore claims a handful of ash from burned bones sprinkled at the plowshare's path could magically soften stubborn earth, though few practical farmers ever admitted trying such ghostly fertilizer. Joke one, maybe I should start collecting bone dust at the auction block. Across the field, the master's overseer rides a slender horse in russet cloak, brandishing an iron-topped crop that glints in the mid-morning sun. He circles you like a hawk, eyes narrowed, expecting perfect straight furrows. One misaligned row invites a crack of his whip and a week's worth of extra chores. You straighten your back cheeks, burning with both heat and humiliation, and whisper, "Sorry, Mistress Whip and Wheel." You grit your teeth, but praise the land for the grain soon to come. As you guide the plow, the chess weaver joins the next ox team, her hand surprisingly sure as she lifts her share of the beam. You salute her with a wry grin from auction block to arable glory. She glances over frost's sparkle in her hair and nods once her silent pact of solidarity under open sky. You recall how she once coaxed a mirage into focus with a pottery shard, and you feel her calm strength seep into your own trembling arms. The sun climbs higher, and the air shimmers in waves, turning the field into a furnace. You taste dust in every breath, each inhale a gamble between grit and oxygen. A joke, too, flickers in your mind. At least I'll grow grains in my lungs along with barley. You trudge on each step, following the oxen's hoof prints. The plow wheels spoke creaking like an old man's knees. Underfoot, the soil gives way to a buried stone, halting your progress. You halt, heart thumping, and bend to probe the obstruction with the plow tip. It's a rough boulder, perhaps an erratic left, by long melted glaciers. You heave with all your might, dislodging it into the grass verge. The overseer smirks at your effort as if saving the land from your ineptitude. You dust off, your hands tasting victory in the lump of clay that fell away. A fringe rumor drifts back that some thralls marked buried treasure caches by loosening earth around odd stones, though whether these myths reflect actual treasure or just elaborate pranks remains a heated debate among saga scholars. You stroke the striations on the plowshare, imagining glints of gold beneath. If only bounty were as plentiful as boulders in these fields. As noon approaches, your shoulders sag beneath sweat-soaked tunic. You hear the toll of a horn from the longhouse yard lunch. You pause, guiding the oxen into a neat line, and the beasts start sound like applause for your endurance. You unstrap the plow beam and let it drop with a thunk that echoes across the field. Every muscle protests, but the sun's fierce gaze reminds you this is no respite. It's only a half-meal break. You find yourself at the edge of the field where a wooden trough holds muddy spring water. You dip your hands in slurping the chill liquid and spraying droplets in relief. A fringe notion suggests that adding a pinch of crushed mint leaves could ward off stomach ailments. But in this remote outpost, fresh herbs are rarer than free breaths. You rinse with vigor, then gulp again, tasting earth and hope. Your lunch is a humble meal, half a loaf of black rye bread and a smear of goat cheese so pungent it could rival the bull's morning greeting. You chew carefully, mindful of hard crusts that might crack a tooth. Historians still debate whether thralls ever received full shares of provisions or if masters skimmed the best bits for themselves. Today, your ration feels like both mercy and punishment. You swallow the last crumb and pat your belly empty, but grateful. Back at the plow, the overseer's shadow falls across your furrows. He spits, mutters something about slack work, and swings the whip end of his crop in a lazy arc. A spark of defiance rises, you lift your chin and set your jaw. You might be thrall-bound, but you still control how you carry that beam. The whip cracks through the air without impact. You step forward, planting the plowshare into the earth with renewed determination. Row by row, the field transforms, dark earth turned over to reveal hope beneath. Each turning clod glints with potential seed wheat. Barley oats promises you'll never taste bread again like this. The overseer calls a halt as dusk's amber light settles. You guide the oxen back to their pen sweat and dust, mingling in rivulets down your back. As you unhook the yoke, the chest weaver approaches her hands, still strong, flour-dusted from repairing the manor's mead barrels. She offers a small crust of leftover bread, hers from some secret unopened store. You accept it, gratefully tasting both sustenance and solidarity. In her eyes, you see a reflection of your own resilience, forged by back-breaking toil and shared adversity. Before you return the oxen to the meadow, you kneel and press your palm to the freshly turned earth, feeling its cool promise against your calloused hand. A silent vow forms. One day you'll plant seeds, not for another master's profit, but for your own hearth's warmth. Tonight, you'll sleep on straw and wake before dawn, ready to break turf and plow fields once more. But for now, as the sky blushes pink and the longhouse lights flicker on, you feel a fierce pride. You survived another day of back-breaking fieldwork, a testament that even the hardest labor can't break the resolve forged in fire and frost. You trudge back into the longhouse's smoky heart, where the low ceiling drips soot like stalactites, and the hearth crackles with roared logs. The pungent aroma of last night's porridge scorches your nostrils as you kick aside muddy boots and step onto straw-strewn planks. The master's cook, a squat thrall with a face as lined as birch bark, hands you a wooden pestle and a carved stone mortar, motioning you to grind barley for tomorrow's gruel. Your shoulders ache from dawn's peat and the field's plow, and your arms tremble as you pound the barley, each strike echoing in the cavernous hall. Mainstream sources note that Viking kitchens relied on thralls to process grain and prepare the day's sustenance with hand-operated querns and mortars in almost every household. Historians still argue whether such labor-saving mills introduced in some regions ever significantly eased thralls' burdens, or simply shifted the work to collective village tasks. You lean into the mortar, minding each clink of grain against stone, and taste dust that settles on your tongue like chalk. A fringed tale drifts through your mind that some cunning thralls once secreted gemstones among the grain to trade down the line, though most practical cooks insisted those rocks ruined the blade's edge. You laugh softly, at least diamonds won't dull mortar stones, joke one. Nearby, the chess weaver scours greasy pots with iron fire tongs, her fingers blistered but steady. She hums a tune she learned from Celtic captives, an eerie lilting melody that drifts through the kitchen's haze. You catch her eye and nod in solidarity, then recall how she once saved a chicken from the chopping block by trading a silver ring. Her mercenary mercy still warms your heart. A wooden bucket filled with cold water sits by the hearth. You dip a rag and scrub blackened cauldrons until your knuckles sting. A stray ember pops against the bucket rim, hissing like a scorpion. Mainstream chronicles describe Viking hearth fires as central gathering spots for storytelling and cooking, though historians still debate whether thralls ever shared in those communal tales or remained behind the curtain of service. You hum a refrain from last night's saga recitals, letting the melody wash away soot and sorrow. The cook nods and hands you a wooden bowl of diced onions and dried fish, tomorrow's fish soup base. Your nose wrinkles at the pungent aroma, but you stir the mixture into a simmering pot steam, fogging your vision and turning the kitchen into a misty grotto. Fringe gossip holds that some cooks laced soup with ground scorpion shells for protein. Whether that was fact or fable remains a prickly question among food historians. You stick to fish, less crunchy, more forgiving. As the soup bubbles, you tie an apron of patched linen around your waist and peel potatoes from a wooden trough. Each peel curls in long spirals, the pale flesh yielding under your knife's edge. A joke, too, flits through nothing, says peasant life like hour-long potato peeling ceremonies under a smoky chandelier. The cook smirks at your grimace, then tosses a peeled spud at you like a softball practice for next time. You ladle fish soup into chipped wooden bowls, passing them to the farmhands huddled around the hearth's stone bench. Their hollow eyes brighten at the first spoonful, steam rising like blessings. You sip a bowl yourself, warmth sliding down your throat, chasing the morning's ache from your bones. Historians still argue whether thralls ever received full rations or only scraps. Here you taste genuine sustenance, a rare kindness in the daily grind. The master's family files in their boots pristine against your flour-dusted feet. They grace the high table's benches while you and other thralls stand behind, ready to refill bowls. You catch the mistress's eye. She surveys her feast, with contentment, unaware of the arms that prepared it. A knot tightens in your chest service, mingled with invisibility, the thrall's paradox in every shared meal. When the family rises, you clear the table stacking bowls and wiping glaze from the board. The chest weaver joins you, her eyes reflecting dancing flames as we exchange a silent nod. We both know the kitchen's heat is no refuge but a crucible where endurance is forged by ladle and flame. As embers die down and the cook dismisses you with a curt nod, you unstrap the apron and let the heat's last glow fade. You step outside into cool afternoon air soot streaking your cheeks like tribal lines. The longhouse door slams behind you, leaving only the rhythm of your heartbeat and the distant lowing of cattle. You take a deep breath, tasting freedom's tentative spark before the next chore summons you forward. Each task, however menial, is a testament to survival in this harsh world. And as you trudge away from the smoky hearth, you carry with you the warmth of a shared meal, the fleeting balm that fuels you for the brutal life of a Viking slave. The midday sun glares down as you kneel in the courtyard, dirt-back bare and slick with sweat, waiting for the master's overseer to select the birch rod. You hear its rasping hiss before you see it long, slender branches bound into a whip that glints like sharpened reeds. You flinch as he approaches the crack of that whip, a promise of pain sharper than any sword. Mercy here is as rare as fresh bread in a winter storm. Stand still, the overseer barks, and you obey feet planted in the dusty furrows of yesterday's plow. Mainstream law codes from the Viking era allowed masters to discipline thralls with corporal punishment lashes for disobedience or poor work. Yet scholars still argue whether any legal limits existed on the number of strokes a thrall could endure. You inhale tasting dust and fear, and hope your past day's toil counts for more than any ledger entry. The birch rod snaps down, and your first lash sears across your shoulder like a brand of shame. You gasp back, arching involuntarily, and grit your teeth against the sting. A fringed tale drifts through your mind that some daring thralls once lined their backs with soot and grime before punishment betting the whip would bounce off like rain on oil. Though most practical overseers carried oil to strip away such shields. You bite your lip, at least soot makes an interesting fashion statement. Joke one who knew the latest winter trend was the birched back look. Stroke after stroke, the overseer drives you to the brink of tears and delirium. Each lash writes a red line across your skin, a cruel tapestry of authority. You taste copper on your tongue from biting so hard, and your vision blurs at the edges. Move, he snarls, and you stagger to your feet, legs trembling like saplings in a gale. The pain pulses, echoing in every step, reminding you that in this world, submission often comes wrapped in leather and birch. Nearby, the chest weaver stands frozen, her own back marked by cruel arcs. She grips a tattered shawl at her throat, eyes bright, though she does not flinch again. You recall how she once retrieved your chest night from beneath swirling sands, her steady calm as sharp as a whetted blade. You muster a nod, our unspoken bond, more healing than any salve. When the lashes cease, you're ordered to present your hands. The overseer holds a branding iron, glowing with molten pitch and iron tipped with the master's rune mark, used to mark thralls as property. Fringe rumors claim some rural communities employed a salt and iron mixture that burned with less flesh damage but left more lasting scars, though most masters preferred the more dramatic torch method. Scholars still debate whether branding was widespread or reserved for extreme cases. Today, you wonder if you'll ever escape carry marks heavier than your chains. The iron presses against your palm. You close your eyes, tasting brine and ash as your skin opens like a book. The heat sears through muscle and bone, and you gasp with a sound that feels both animal and human. The overseer hisses approval. Your new rune brand now glows brightly against reddened flesh. You stumble backward, clutching your palm, and whisper a prayer you never learned. Around you, other thralls shift uneasily. A hulking farmer flinches as his own brand smolders on his forearm. A young girl stands trembling as the overseer circles her, measuring her small frame for both brand and burden. You swallow tasting grit and shame and wonder if solidarity can be branded too. Once branded, you're ordered to wheel a barrel of water across the courtyard. Every jostle of the barrel's wooden staves threatens to rub salt in your wound. Sweat mixes with the blood trickling down your palm into the water's murky depths. Each roll of the barrel creaks like a lament, each splash a silent sob. Joke too. At least this water barrel doubles as a mobile ice pack. When the barrel is emptied, you refill it and return it to the kitchen hearth where the cook ladles hot broth into iron pans. You touch your palm to the steaming metal, letting warmth dull the pain. The cook sneers, but ladles an extra spoonful into your bowl, small mercy earned by silent suffering. You swallow the broth, tasting marrow and relief. Night falls, and the longhouse yard quiets, except for the crackle of torches and the distant lowing of cattle. You return to your straw pallet, back against the wall, your palm throbbing in the dim glow. The fellow thrall beside you mutters, "They say the brand will fade with time, but the shame never does." You close your eyes, feeling every lash echo in your bones. Still a spark of defiance flickers. You recall the old thrall's advice. When they mark your flesh, mark your mind with dreams of freedom. You press your tongue to the spot that burned, a silent vow forming in the seared flesh. These scars will not break you. Historians still argue whether memories of physical pain shaped thrall rebellions or simply drove them silent. Tonight, your resolve rises with the moon's pale arc. In the half-dark, you trace the rune brand with trembling fingertips, each curve a reminder of injustice. Yet you also feel a surge of defiance. Each burn is also a testament to your endurance, a personal rune of perseverance. You lay back on the straw body, aching but spirit unbowed. Outside, the wind sighs through thatched eaves, carrying the distant howl of wolves. You clutch your brand-marked hand to your chest, breathing slow and steady. The lash of the whip may break the body, but your dreams of freedom remain unscathed, etched deeper than any burn. As you drift toward uneasy sleep, a final thought lingers. No matter how fierce the punishment, hope's flame flickers still. You slip out of the longhouse under a quilt of ink-black sky, the scent of smoldering peat fading on your skin as you tiptoe between sleeping thralls. Above you, stars glitter like spilled silver constellations, tracing paths you half remember from childhood stories. You draw in a silent breath, tasting smoke and midnight chill, and press your hand to the rough timber of a hidden post, your secret altar. You kneel on frosted grass, the cool dew seeping through your tunic, and whisper a prayer to old gods whose names you still dare invoke. Odin, grant me cunning. You murmur voice a hushed thread in the night's tapestry. Freya, shield my heart. Mainstream sources note that Viking belief held nightly offerings to be vital for securing safe passage and good fortune, often left at crossroads or under sacred trees. Historians still argue whether such rituals were collective rites among communities or solitary devotions practiced in shadows. But here in your stolen moment, it feels as necessary as breathing. You produce from your tunic a small bone carved with runic symbols, a fringe heirloom rumored among thralls to carry protective charm if pressed to the skin. Some claim that burying such bone beneath your pillow wards off nightmares of lashes and branding irons. Whether that truly chased away fear or simply offered psychological comfort is a point of heated debate among saga scholars. You press the bone against your brow, feeling its cool weight as you add your own whispered words to its enchantment. Above, a lone star winks, perhaps Tyra watching from his celestial perch, or perhaps just a flicker in your longing. You fold your fingers in silent offerings, imagining pagan altars of old wooden posts carved with knotwork and hung with bristling tokens. You trace a line in the earth, marking a sacred circle no overseer can see, and step into it barefoot. Frost bites your toes, but you stand firm, feeling the ground's ancient pulse beneath. A breeze stirs, carrying distant howls from fields beyond the ridge. You cloak your prayer in soft sarcasm. Hell, if you're listening, spare me tomorrow's birch rod. You offer a wry grin to the night, drawing courage from humor. Joke one who knew the goddess of the underworld had such a sense of irony. The pond surface beneath the weaver's window glints moonlight like a polished shield. You slip closer, kneeling at its margin to fetch a handful of water, then sprinkle droplets around your circle's sacrificial dew to awaken old spirits. The weaver's flute hums softly in accompaniment as if she senses your vigil. You taste the water's chill at your lips. It's clearer than the thrall well, a small miracle of purity you share with the gods. Your breath clouds and puffs, and you recall the branding flame's heat, the whip's crack, the salt of tears. You let those memories flow into your prayer, Locker, guide my path beyond iron gates. Njörda, calm the waves of fear. The names feel heavy on your tongue, heavy with centuries of myth and longing. You wonder if the old Norse words still carry power when spoken by one bound in chains. A shadow drifts, perhaps a prowler, perhaps a sentinel horse's flank. You slip the bone back into your pouch and rise careful to leave no sign of your secret altar. The weaver nods in the dim glow of her window, her silent confirmation, a covenant. You pat your heart, feeling it pound with stolen hope. The wind rustles through the barley on the field's edge. You scrape your boots clean on the stone threshold and ease back inside. The longhouse slumbers under embers glow torches, guttering like yawning mouths. No overseer's whip cracks here, no chains clink, disturbs the hush. You slide between straw pallets, the mattress rough but warm. Your mind drifts to morning's work, plow hearth whipping, but for this moment you hold to your private prayer. In the darkness, your whispered oaths weave threads of defiance that your spirit, though thrall-bound, remains free in devotion. Historians still argue whether Christian conversion later erased these pagan whispers or forged a syncretic faith among Norse peasants. For you, faith is neither monolith nor strictly forbidden, but your own lifeline in the tide of servitude. As sleep tugs at your lids, you murmur a final thanks to the old gods and to the new strength you grant. You feel the bones warmth through your tunic, a heartbeat against your chest. The room dims behind your closed eyes, and in that last silver glimmer of consciousness, you imagine yourself unshackled, standing beneath the dawn sky, unblemished by chains, and then carried by the silence of midnight, you drift beyond pain and duty, cradled by whispers older than your master's walls, prayers that will outlive shackles and sorrow, echoing in your dreams of freedom. You slip into the workshop's dim corner as torches gutter in the longhouse hall, lamplight pooling on a low bench where your tools lie an iron awl, a chipped bone needle, and a small block of oak. The chatter of evening feasting drifts through the planks, but here you're different. A humble thrall whose hands shape wood and weave silk, earning curious glances from free-born onlookers. You cradle the wooden block in your lap and tap your awl, gently hollowing a spoon bowl with careful strokes. Each shavings curl like pale ribbons across your knees. Mainstream sources note that Viking Age thralls were sometimes assigned specialized crafts, wood carving, weaving, metalwork that supplemented household needs and showcased artisanship beyond mere muscle labor. Historians still argue whether such skills elevated thralls' status enough to earn partial freedoms or simply deepened their economic value to masters. You trace a runic pattern you learned from the weaver's rune bone, carving the symbol for safe passage along the spoon's handle. A fringed tale insists that thralls once painted hidden runes on tools to ward off ill fortune, a secret pact between maker and object. But most practical craftsmen stuck to simple knotwork. You tap the handle lightly and grin. If it really worked, you'd have runes on every split fingernail joke won. Across the bench rests a torn bolt of silk from the merchant's caravan. You press a fingertip to the tear-gathering threads between stripped cotton fibers. The chest weaver joins you, lamp in hand, murmuring praise as you thread the bone needle with shimmering silk fiber. Your posture relaxes as you mend the tear with tiny, even stitches. She hums a refrain from last night's dirge, and you adjust the tension until the silk lies smooth, invisible to any but the closest eye. A shadow flickers, perhaps the overseer's wife seeking a repaired garment, perhaps a curious child spying craftsmanship. You glance up, heart fluttering, then nod and return to your seam. Joke too. If free folk knew how thin our social fabric is, they'd pay us in wine just to keep quiet about the holes. The spoon's bowl takes shape smooth as river stone. You sand the edges with a scrap of leather, feeling the grain beneath your fingertips. The wood smells of sap and promise. You recall the branding iron's heat, the whip's tear, and let the spoon's gentle curves soothe your memory. Each cut is a stroke against pain, each polish a silent victory. Your back stiffens as you switch tools and all for drilling a small hole at the spoon's tip so it can hang from a leather thong. You press the bit into the wood and twist, feeling the grain give with a soft whisper. Around you, the longhouse's hearth laughs in golden hues. You hum a tune of your own, devising a quiet mantra that threads through your knuckles and into the wood. When the spoon's finished, you lift it to the lamp flame. Its curves and runes catch glints of amber light. You close your eyes briefly, imagining your own freedom from iron shackles. A joke 3 pops in. Maybe this spoon will spoon feed me a ticket out of servitude. Next, you drape the repaired silk over your lap. You embroider along the seam with contrasting thread indigo on cream stitching a small ram's horn motif, a callback to Bertha's stubborn humps and your thorny trials together. The weaver smiles, recalling your shared ordeals, the sandstorm, the branding, the midnight altar. Each embroidered twist is a reminder that even in shadows, craftsmanship can forge connections. Above, the master's children race through the hall, their laughter echoing like bells. You feel a pang. They too run free, unmarked by whips or iron. Yet here, in this secret workshop, you stand unshackled, if only in spirit, by the rhythm of tool and thread. You finish the silk and fold it neatly, hiding your work beneath a cloth. You tuck the spoon into your pocket, its runic handle pressing against your thigh with quiet insistence. Outside, the wind rattles the thatch, and the longhouse settles into a low murmur sleep, calling to all within. In the hush, the overseer's voice calls thralls to bed, and you gather your tools. The moonlight glances off the ivory bone needle tucked in your sash, a symbol of hidden strength. You recall the prayer bone's cool comfort and the rune spoon's promise. As you ease onto your straw pallet tools at your side, you consider the strange currency of skill. A smooth spoon here, a mended gown there, earned murmurs of respect instead of lashes or binds. Historians still debate whether skilled thralls ever parlayed craftsmanship into formal manumission, or if such tales belong to sagas' sweet lies. You press the wood against your chest, a talisman for hope. Outside, the sea's faint roar drifts inland, a reminder of oars and gnars awaiting tomorrow's dawn. You close your eyes, palms chafed and heart lightened by the day's hidden craft. In these lamp-lit hours, you carve more than wood and mend more than silk. You carve space for your own agency in a world bent on ownership. And as sleep gathers its soft veil around you, you carry one final thought: even shackled hands that create can never be fully bound. You slip from your straw pallet into the dim corridor, the longhouse still hushed, except for the soft creak of floorboards beneath your boots. Moonlight filters through narrow windows, casting silver bars across the wooden planks. You edge toward the rear room, your clandestine meeting place, where the chess weaver waits, her silhouette framed by a single flickering lamp. She offers you a crust of rye bread smuggled from the cook's larder, its crumb dense and warm against your fingers. You break it in half, sharing each jagged piece in reverent silence. Around you, fellow thralls, once strangers, in the glare of the auction block cluster like an unspoken family bound by hardship. You taste the bread's earthy tang and feel solidarity rise in your chest. Mainstream accounts note that thralls in Norse society sometimes formed secret support networks, sharing food and stories under cover of night. Historians still argue whether these gatherings ever posed a genuine threat to masters or remained small comforts in an unfree life. A faint drip echoes from the far corner where a water leak traces rivulets down a stone wall. You lean in, dipping a fingertip to test the cool trickle tonight's ration of water, saved for this moment. A fringed tale whispers that some thralls once diluted their master's brew with hidden drips to dull the overseer's senses. Whether those small sabotage efforts ever turned the tide of power or simply eased a scratchy throat is a point of debate among saga scholars. You hum softly, pressing water to your lips, then pass the borrowed loaf along. The chess weaver retrieves a carved bone token from her pocket, a small rectangular piece etched with runes you memorized. It's a calling card among thralls' proof of trust in this circle. You slip the token into your own palm, feeling the grooves beneath your skin. Each rune tips with silver lamina, catching lamplight in ghostly glints. You swallow tasting metal and hope and tuck the token into your satchel. Joke 1-0 says, "I trust you," like sharing a tiny piece of carved animal bone. Beside the weaver, the spice merchant rolls out a bit of whetstone and sharpens a hidden knife, its blade short but deadly. He slides a sharpened whetstone shard to you. "For emergencies," he whispers, eyes glinting. You run a thumb along the edge, shivering at its cruel precision. A joke flits through your mind. If the worst comes, at least my fingerprints will tell a dramatic story. The air smells of saffron and tension spices. For victory or vengeance, you're not sure which yet. A third thrall, the old river ferryman, clears his throat and unsheathes a small leather-bound book, an impossible treasure. He reads a few lines from a psalter in Old English, his voice low and rhythmic. The words swirl in your mind like drifting petals. Mainstream sources show that Christian texts reached Scandinavia by the 10th century through trade and conquest, though historians still debate how deeply Christian beliefs penetrated thrall society or remained superficial. Tonight, the Psalm's promise of deliverance feels like a beacon in a sea of despair. Your stomach grumbles, reminding you of tomorrow's dawn chores. You glance at the spice merchant who produces a tiny tin of dried berries, strawberry-like fruits picked from the hedgerows near a forgotten shrine. You pop one into your mouth. Its sweetness bursts amid the bread's warmth, a stolen luxury. A joke, too, if berries were currency. We'd all be lords of the realm. The old ferryman tucks the psalter away, and the circle grows silent, each of you caught in your own reflection, the burned scars on your hands, the stitch holes in your cheek, the furtive glance of a fled dream. Under the lamp's sway you share a collective breath, a pact of hushed defiance. You realize that bonds forged in fear can become stronger than any chain. Outside, a dog barks in the yard and you freeze. A guard's footstep echoes down the hall. You each stiffen, hearts thudding. The ferryman whispers, "Hide quickly." You slip behind a curtained alcove, hearing the guard's heavy boots pass oblivious to this secret brotherhood. When the hall falls silent again, you exhale in unison relief, washing over you like dawn light. The chess weaver whispers, "We move at dawn." You nod. Plans flicker in her eyes, freeing one thrall here, smuggling a message there. You imagine unlocking your own shackles, stepping into the morning mist unbound. Fringe lore speaks of a thrall uprising that once ended in bitter defeat, a cautionary example that freedom's price is steep. Historians still argue whether any large-scale revolts occurred or if they remain mythic cautionary tales. Tonight, you hold both hope and doubt in equal measure. The weaver stands and tucks away her tools, a slender wooden case of chess pieces, each carved from walrus, ivory, and slate. "Good luck," she breathes, pressing a carved knight into your palm. Its chipped edge feels comforting, a reminder that even fractured things can be strong. Joke 3, I'll remember your knight next time I'm offered as pawn. One by one, you slip back to your pallets, hearts lighter and burdened simultaneously. Your mind races with plans and prayers as you settle onto straw. The Psalter's verses echo faintly. The bone-run spoon's promise tickles your imagination. The knife's edge, a cold comfort beneath your tunic. You close your eyes, stepping beyond fear's threshold into a thin realm of daring. In the dawn's hush, before the overseer's first call, you will rise together. Tonight, in these shadows, you learned that hidden bonds can outlast iron, that shared bread tastes sweeter than stolen freedom, and that a whispered promise can carry more weight than any chain. You huddle beneath a low eave as dawn's chill eases into pale warmth, pouring over the charred parchment that the weaver slipped you last night, a fragment of your master's law code, scratched with faint runes detailing thrall's path to freedom. Each rune flickers in your memory, promises of a blood-price redemption or an act of valor that might earn your manumission. You trace the faded lines with a trembling fingertip, heart thrumming with the weight of possibility. Mainstream law codes from the Viking age, like the Gragas, sometimes set specific weregild prices for freeing a thrall, a modest sum for ordinary laborers, rising steeply for skilled artisans. Historians still argue whether these manumission provisions were ever realistically attainable for most captives or remained theoretical liberties reserved for favored few. As you read, Threll skuldra fim, 100 penninga, a 5,000 pennies to buy your own chains, you swallow, tasting both hope and despair. A fringe rumor drifts to mind that a legendary thrall once bested a berserker in single combat to secure his freedom, the duel forging a saga whispered in taverns from Hedeby to York. Whether that blood-claimed tale belongs to fact or saga, embroidery remains a contentious debate among skalds. You imagine yourself standing toe-to-toe with a warrior, spite-fueled adrenaline lending strength to your arms. Joke 1, at least if I lose, I'll die with a heroic tale instead of a branding scar. You fold the parchment, slipping it into your satchel, and rise. The mead hall door creaks as the master's wife emerges with a copper bowl of fish and barley gruel. You bow, accepting the modest breakfast mind, racing with schemes to gather 500 pennies. The return of that bowl feels heavier now you calculate it covers only a fraction of the price. Still, each spoonful fuels your resolve. Outside the slave market ledger lies on a wooden table near the forge, a thick codex of names and prices. You approach careful to keep your back to the wall as freeborn traders haggle over oxen hides. You glimpse your sale price, 30 dirhams, and translate pennies into dirhams in your head, a fraction of what you need. Financing freedom by day's work seems laughable, but you recall the weaver's quiet words, every small debt paid brings you closer. You consider bargaining small fees from petty tasks, collecting coin by coin like a miser counting stolen gold. The chest weaver joins you rolling out a pouch of amber beads he carved from Baltic amber. These fetch 20 at the market, he whispers. Save them for your ransom. You press cool beads against your palm treasures born of time and vow not to trade them lightly. Joke 2. Who knew bondage came with its own built-in savings plan? A sudden commotion draws your gaze. A freed thrall strides through the courtyard cloak of coarse wool around his shoulders and a stamped wooden token dangling at his belt. He lifts his head with a proud tilt, passing free folk without a flicker of deference. You watch him vanish toward the town gate, each confident footstep a dagger of envy. You taste bile, someone you once stood beside on the block, now strides toward dawn's promise, while you remain bound. The old river ferryman sidles up gravel, crunching under his worn boots. He murmurs, "There's another way service in war." You narrow your eyes. Valor's price is blood, you murmur back. He nods. Masters sometimes granted freedom to thralls who fought in raiding parties or defended the homestead from raiders, an opportunity to earn one's name and freedom by risk and valor. Scholars still argue whether thralls actually served in battle or if such allowances were reserved for sons of chiefs. You consider the irony to win freedom. You might have to swing an axe against fellow Norsemen. Your stomach twists. You've seen warriors drunk on bloodlust, eager to hew enemy skulls. Could you face that torrent for a chance at manumission? The grief of killing fellow kin traders, captives, even wayward neighbors, feels heavier than any iron shackle. Yet the ferryman's grave gaze reminds you that choice often arrives on a sharpened brink. You wander toward the forge where the master smith hammers glowing iron. Sparks fly like little suns. You recall your carpentry spoons and silk stitches, small acts that earned respect but not coin. You step close, feeling heat ripple in your chest. Could your crafts sell for pennies? Would masters purchase artisanal wares if they equate beauty with bondage? You taste metal on your tongue and debate whether artistry can replace axe swinging in the ledger of freedom. At the forge's edge, the smith tests a blade's temper by striking it against an anvil. The ringing clang resonates in your bones. He glances at you. "Need a tool made?" he asks, eyeing your rough-clawed hands. You nod, realizing that a custom blade, small but sharp, might fetch more than amber beads. You barter 1 spoon for a simple knife with carved hilt. The smith weighs the trade in brisk seconds, then nods. You exchange your runic spoon, an heirloom of hope, for a knife that could carve your own fate or spill blood to win it. The chess weaver flicks his pawn against wood. Values in need, he muses. Craft for coin, coin for freedom. You slip the knife into your sash, its weight comforting. Joke 3, finally a tool that slices more than bread. As midday sun warms the courtyard, you tally your budding ransom, amber beads carved, spoon potential knife sale, odd coins from secret chores. The sum is still dwarfed by 500 pennies, but every stride begins with a single step. You touch the rune on the spoon's handle, recalling your midnight prayer and hidden altar. Hope, like timber, can be carved from small beginnings. You rendezvous with the weaver near the hidden post. He presses the bone token into your palm, its runes glinting. Tonight, he says we try for more. You nod, heart pounding, with a new pact, no longer bound only by iron, but by shared ambition. Freedom's price looms large, but each tiny payment, each act of skill or valor brings you closer. As the master's horn barks for afternoon toil, you walk back to the field's knife, sheathed at your side spoon, long gone. You shoulder the yoke of chores once more, muscles rebelling, but your mind races with ransom plans and daring service offers. Whether through blood price or battle craftsmanship or clandestine coin, you're forging a path to freedom in the crucible of thrall life. And as the horizon bleeds into dusk, you realize that manumission is not a single gift, but a mosaic of choices, each small act a tile in the greater design of your liberation. You trudge on heart, steeled by rune and resolve, ready to meet the cost of your chains with cunning courage and the unquenchable spark of hope. You pause at the well's edge, bucket in hand, as the morning sun slants across the yard, and your mind drifts back to fjord smoke mornings long ago, when your mother's lullaby floated across our turf roof like gilded mist. You taste salt on your tongue, as if the sea's mist carried across years to recall her soft voice crooning Solska manans liosid, the song of moonlight's dawn, her words a cradle in the night. Now every bucket brims with memory, the echo of her final kiss, the blurred face of your younger brother chasing sheep along the pebbled shore. Mainstream sources note that kinship lay at the heart of Norse society, with thralls often removed from fosterage arrangements that wove families together. Kin group obligations ran so deep that orphaned children were sometimes claimed by free households. Historians still argue whether thralls maintained any meaningful ties to birth families, or if captivity severed those bonds as decisively as an axe to bone. You swallow, tasting both longing and dust, as the bucket slides down the rope with a hollow clunk. A stray whisper drifts across your memory that some thralls tied strands of their own hair to small wooden crosses and floated them downstream, trusting the river to carry tokens of love back to distant kin. A fringe practice said to guide messages by water's will. You close your eyes against the chill and imagine your braid drifting on ripples toward home, then flinch as the rope winds beneath your fingers. Joke 1, if only the river were as reliable as the smith's hammer. You hoist the bucket, cold water splashing over the well's lip, and trudge toward the courtyard, where the overseer's wife eyes your wet tunic with contempt. You set the bucket down with such force that water sloshes onto cracked stones, each droplet a silent tribute to those left behind. In the longhouse's dim corner, the chess weaver hums an unfamiliar tune, perhaps the Gaelic lullaby she learned last moon. Its melody tugs at your heart, a reminder that solace comes in fractional notes. You lean against the wall, letting the memory flood you, your mother's warm palm brushing your brow, your brother humming along with a crooked grin. Later at the fields, you guide the plow, but your thoughts plow deeper, a half-remembered stanza of a lullaby, the clatter of her wooden spindle turning wool at the hearth, the taste of fresh buttered barley bread, the oxen's low pull and the plowshare's creak anchor you back to the present, yet the ache of separation hammers at your ribs. Fringe lore says that some enslaved mothers taught their children lullabies backwards, concealing true words so that only kin could decode them, an encrypted lull. Whether that ever tricked masters or simply confused babes remains a point of spirited debate among skalds. You murmur the reversed refrain under your breath, DNA, gnimulf, emos, tsuja mantra for memory's sake. Joke two at least backwards lullabies double as secret passwords. As you turn to plow, the scent of spring barley drifts on warm wind, mingling with sorrow and hope. You recall the day you left home, fingers scraped on fishing nets, pockets heavy with small shells collected as tokens for your brother. How you promised to return with silks and swords, and how those dreams unraveled in salt and sweat. The overseer's lash cracked like thunder that day. Since then your dreams have traded one set of chains for another. Mid-afternoon, you stagger back to the longhouse yard carrying a fur pelt for the smith's apprentice. Each step echoes in your memory, the yard's outlines superimposed over your childhood meadow. You pause at the door and catch the scent of birch logs burning, a whiff of home's hearth that clears your thoughts for a moment. A scholar's question comes to mind: did thralls ever genuinely yearn for freedom, or did they fashion acceptance from necessity? You shake your head. Both truths coexist in your chest. Inside the workshop's gloom, you spread the pelt over a bench and smooth its edges. The apprentice, a freeman's son, watches you with curious eyes. You share a brief nod, a silent exchange across the chasm of status. You recall how your brother once watched you whittle small wooden boats for him, marveling at their perfect symmetry. Now you whittle hope itself, carving each moment of remembrance into your soul's grain. As dusk approaches, you trudge to the hidden corner where the weaver and ferryman gather. The bone-run spoon handle warms in your palm, and you close your eyes, humming the lullaby in its true form, Solsker Manans Ljosid. The weaver's flute picks up the strain, weaving a fragile harmony that threads through the night. You taste the song on your lips, a salve against separation. The old ferryman presses a leather pouch into your hand, a scrap of cloth embroidered by your mother's hand, found in the weaver's secret trunk. You unfold it to reveal tiny stitches forming a faded ram's head, its horns curling in familiar loops. Tears sting your vision as you brush the cloth against your cheek. You swallow, tasting salt and love entwined. Under the moon's silver gaze, you press the cloth to your heart, whispering the names that shaped you, Modir Brodir. Whether your kin still live or lie buried under northern stones, their essence drifts in your veins. Tonight, you carry home in your satchel, in a scrap of cloth, in a reversed lullaby, in a whispered vow that distance cannot erase. A final joke creeps through your sorrow. If kinship is currency, then I'm richer than any market trader. You let the laughter slip free, a brief lightness in shadows. The weaver and ferryman join you in its echo, and for a moment you are unbound by chains, tethered instead to the invisible threads of family. As the hidden circle disperses, you tuck the cloth into your tunic runes, dancing at its edge. Each step back to your pallet carries the weight of love and loss, forging kinship anew in your beating heart. And as you drift toward slumber, the lullaby remains your compass, guiding you homeward through a world stitched together by memory and hope. You slip through the pre-dawn mist to the hidden courtyard, where the bone token and rune spoon lie arranged on a flat stone, and you steel yourself for what comes next. Shadows cluster in the half-light fellow thralls, armed with sharpened knives, makeshift clubs, and silent determination. Tonight, you plot not chores or manumission fees, but revolt. Remember the whip, the spice merchant hisses, pressing a sharpened whetstone blade into your hand, its edge keen enough to sever a rope or a tendon. Mainstream chronicles record rare instances of thrall uprisings in Viking lands, most notably the 10th century rebellion at Gotland, where enslaved workers briefly seized arms before being brutally suppressed. Historians still debate whether such revolts were spontaneous outbursts of despair or reflected organized resistance with leadership and strategy. Your heart hammers as you recall the crack of the overseer's birch rod, the branding fire's scorch, the cook's cruel smirk. Tonight, you repay fear in kind. A fringe rumor whispers that some revolts employed stolen livestock as battering rams against the longhouse door, though most practical attackers found cows too stubborn to herd. You grin at the thought cow-powered coup. Now there's a headline. Joke 1. Just imagine the look on those cows when you declare them generals. You move like a ghost through the mist, flanked by the chess weaver, her face determined beneath hooded cloak, and the old ferryman who carries a tiny horn to signal the charge. Under your breath, you whisper, for kin, for chain, for dawn. Each thrall grips their weapon, anticipation crackling like static before a storm. The plan is simple. Seize the cook's forge for tools, block the courtyard gates, and free any thrall still shackled in the stall, then ride to the harbor and claim a ship. At the forge, you slip inside as the smith's apprentice snores by the glowing embers. You retrieve iron pokers and a stubby hammer. The ferryman's horn tolls once a low bellow that vibrates through stone. You step outside brandishing tools against slumbering guards. The coup's rhythm begins a low hiss of blades drawn, then soft shouts as ropes are cut and shackles fall away. You release one thrall after another, faces brightening as freedom's spark flares. In the main yard, shouts of Freya's wrath echo off wooden walls. The overseer staggers from his chamber, whip still in hand, only to find a circle of thralls blocking his path. You press forward, knife poised, yet hesitate when you glimpse the overseer's terrified eyes. He raises his free hand, voice trembling, "Mercy, I beg you." A scholar's debate surfaces whether mercy should temper justice or betray the cause. In that heartbeat, you choose action over pity. A fierce strike severs the overseer's crop, sending it skittering across frost-hardened earth. He crumples, and you kick the whip aside. The cook bursts from the hall pan in hand, and you sidestep, lifting the forge poker to disarm him. He whimpers, offering a cracked loaf of stale bread at your gaze. You shove it into his arms and turn away. Joke 2, starvation, diplomacy, the new frontier. The gates nearby loom closed, heavy oak, bound in iron. The ferryman and spice merchant heave against the bar, their backs straining as you wedge a plank. The latch yields, and the creak of wood snapping open resounds like thunder. Outside, a sentinel guard rounds the corner. You brace, raising the poker, but the guard stops, brow furrowed in confusion. "What is this?" he stammers. You touch the rune on your spoon hilt, that cipher of strength, and simply say, "Freedom." He lowers his weapon, stepping back into the shadows. With gates open, the revolt spills onto the roadway. You spot the longship's mast glinting in moonlight, at the harbor beckoning. Thralls surge forward, dragging freed workers behind them. A stray hound barks, scavenging scraps of chaos. The ferryman's horn sounds thrice, and you surge with your comrades toward the docks. But as you near the water's edge, the town guard assembles, swords, drawn torches raised. You freeze for a heartbeat as steel meets starlight, then charge. The clash is brief and brutal. Iron strikes iron, curses and shouts cut through cold air. You parry, a blow tastes metal on your tongue, and drive the ferryman's horn into a guard's throat, silencing torchlight with crimson bloom. You stumble away, chest heaving, but the path to the ship remains clear. You leap aboard the longship's deck, knives drawn as surprise crew scramble. The captain, a hulking warrior in bearskin helm, raises his axe, but the spice merchant intercepts him with an iron poker, sending the weapon clattering into the water. Shock and defiance dance in the captain's eyes. You press the knife to his throat. He freezes, then nods. His men lower their axes. You seize the ropes and unbind the ship's side, freeing oars locked in iron. The liberated thralls rush to the benches, rowing with savage strength born of vengeance. You glance back at the smoking longhouse, its walls aflame with riot and revolt. Behind you, the town's banners shake in the cold breeze, once symbols of your bondage, now witness to your uprising. As the Norse slips from the quay, sails unfolding like recovered wings, you stand at the prow. The wind whips your hair, taste of salt and a triumph mingling on your lips. Behind you, comrades cheer, a ragged chorus rising with the sea's roar. You grip the rune spoon handle, its promise fulfilled in carved freedom, and salute the moon. Historians still debate whether such daring thrall uprisings ever truly succeeded or were swiftly crushed. Tonight, you rewrite that debate with every stroke of the oar steering toward open horizon and the promise of life unbound. You stand on the deck as twilight drapes the sky in bruised purples, feeling each year's toil etched into the lines of your face, though no mirror reflects them here, only the wind's soft kiss on your scarred skin. You pull your cloak tighter against the chill, each stitch a memory of needle and bone, lash and brand. Ahead lies the horizon's faint glow, freedom's promise or uncharted peril. You're not sure which awaits beyond the sea's edge. You recall the thrall who lasted longest in your village old Thrain, whose white hair and gnarled hands once held heftier hammers than any free man's. Mainstream sagas note that some thralls lived to be as old as free households' elders, their lifespan surprisingly long despite grueling labor and scant rations. Historians still argue whether thralls benefited from life expectancy due to the steady diet and routine chores, or if those records simply reflect idealized tales told around hearths. Your ribs ached from bends and bruises sustained over decades. One scar, a jagged line across your forearm, is a whispered souvenir from the cook's iron-tipped crop. Another, a sunken brand on your palm, burned with the master's rune, now faded but never forgotten. A fringe rumor claims that some thralls used ash from burnt rights, the papers granting freedom to lighten brand scars, believing the embers carried magic. Whether that soot ever masked the burned sting or merely darkened the wound remains a point of contention among rune sages. You rub the brand lightly, soot or no soot, the pain lingers in memory's marrow. Joke one at this point, my scars have better elections than most chieftains. The Nar rocks beneath you oars, slicing silver waves, and you wonder how many nights you spent lying awake on straw pallets, staring at darkness and bargaining with nightmares. A thrum of nervous energy pulses through your chest as you consider Twilight's fate, death by age, death by sword, or the life you've carved grain by grain and stitch by stitch. In a past life, you might have thought fate cruel. Now you see it as a gatekeeper offering passage to whichever realm your deeds merit. Behind you, the chess weaver hums a dirge for old bones, her voice low and mournful. You lean close, catching the scent of autumn leaves she tucked in her cloak as talisman against chill. She taps her ivory pawn, once your shared prize in a secret game, and nods. "We live twice," she whispers. "Once in labor, once in legend." You smile softly. Legends don't draft themselves over plow furrows. Joke two. At least my legend has better mileage than my plow. Across the deck, the spice merchant polishes a reclaimed amber bead, his final saving toward manumission. Each swirl of his cloth brings to mind the moment you first traded that ruined spoon for a knife. Now the knife dangles weighty at your side, a reminder that tools can carve futures. You pat his shoulder. "We've earned each scar, each stitch, each chip of bone." He laughs quietly, a sound that tastes like victory's bruise, bitter and bright. Night thickens, and the stars wheel overhead, the plow, the hunter, the shield constellations trusted by sea and land. You recall how navigators read the skies to steer longships across open waters, a skill once barred to thralls, until cunning and courage earned them oar benches. Whether navigational roles ever granted thralls true equality or simply deeper chains of service is still debated among seafaring scholars. You trace the stars with your gaze, betting your destiny on their silent counsel. A sudden swell heaves the ship, and you grip the railing, not from fear, but from recognition. Age has taught you where to brace, how to yield, how to flow with forces greater than yourself. You close your eyes and let the motion tide your thoughts, the orphan boy, the frightened monk, the wayward merchant you once tended, all lives reshaped by raids and bonds. Each memory a notch on your soul's ledger, each echo a lesson in endurance. The ship's lanterns flicker and shadows dance like ancient runes across the deck planks. You stand in their glow scars, glinting gold proof of survival and sacrifice. Twilight descends not as an ending, but as a threshold. The Krishna priests say soul's fate hangs on deeds before dusk. Old gods say twilight is Odin's call to feast in Valhalla for those who fell in battle. As a thrall turned pathfinder, your creed is simpler. Live with enough grit to greet any dawn, even the one beyond death's door. Your mind drifts to the open sea's horizon, unbroken, unforgiving. A final question surfaces. Will you meet twilight as a broken tool or a finished blade? You flex worn fingers around the knife's hilt, a promise forged in iron and intention. Tonight, twilight's fate is yours to shape, to die a free soul, or to live a marked bone. You exhale, tasting salt and resolve. The lantern's flicker dims as dawn's first star winks. You tip your head upward, greeting that lone ember of light. You stand taller than decades of toil, scars and memories your only inheritance, yes, but inheritance worth guarding. Night's hush envelops you a benediction for weary bones and untold stories. And as your prow cuts the twilight-mottled waves, you walk toward the horizon's promise, each step a testament that even in chains, a thrall's spirit can remain unshackled, wiser worn, and wondrously undefeated. You rise before dawn's first gray glow, still tasting salt on your lips from the sea's gift, and stride to the megalithic rune stone perched on a rolling hill beyond the longhouse. Its weathered face bears runes carved sharp as daggers, stories of thralls and heroes etched centuries ago. You lay your palm on its cool surface, tracing the grooves that spell out deeds of valor lost and liberation. Each carved line feels alive beneath your fingertips, a heartbeat echoing across time. Mainstream sources note that runestones in Viking lands often commemorated warriors and chieftains, yet a handful honor thralls who found valor or mercy, rare monuments in stone. Historians still argue whether these inscriptions reflect genuine thrall emancipation or were later additions by free folk seeking to craft a more inclusive past. You gaze at a faint inscription, Threll Friar Biajo, Il Oke Fek Frialsar. Friar the thrall fought ill and was granted freedom. You swallow, tasting both pride and sorrow. Even stones bleed stories. Behind you, the chess weaver emerges from a stand of birches, flute tucked in her belt. She nods, pointing to your own rune brand's echo in the inscription, similar curves and arcs. You realize your scars carved flesh-bound legacies. This stone carves them into legend. A fringe tale flickers in your mind that some rune stones were believed to sing under moonlight, resonating thralls' voices on wind-worn nights. Whether such stones ever truly sang or simply stirred imaginations is debated by saga singers. You close your eyes, half expecting a whisper of wind to carry your own name. You step back, letting the morning chill settle in your bones. The breeze stirs barley fields below the waves of grain rolling like ancient words waiting to be read. You recall how a village elder once claimed that sowing grain under a rune stone blessed harvests for freed thralls, an agricultural charm entwined with hopes of justice. You grin, at least your ancestors knew fields and freedom share common furrows. Joke 1, maybe if I plant a runestone in the plow's furrow, I'll reap recipes for rebellion. The weaver lays out her carved chess pieces on a fallen log walrus ivory and slate each piece bearing miniature runes. She arranges them in a silent game, bishops and knights aligning in patterns that mirror the runestone script. Stories are moves on life's board, she murmurs. You nod, offering a carved pawn back to her, your victory piece from the revolt. You set it beside the rook, its chipped edge a testament to sacrifices made. Joke 2, winning an uprising beats checkmating a king any day. You wander the hillside reading more runes, tales of thralls who died defending village walls of masters who granted freedom and dying breaths of song sung in halls now fallen to ruin. Each inscription is a fragment of humanity, a shard of hope hammered into stone. You wonder how many unsung thralls' names lie beneath moss awaiting rediscovery. Historians still debate whether large numbers of rune stones ever chronicled commoners' lives, or if surviving ones simply belong to elites. Your gaze sweeps across silent stones, pondering whose voices the wind has lost. Descending, you pass the hidden courtyard where thrall revolt plans took shape, now empty and overgrown. You kneel, pressing your hands into the earth where seeds sprout as if planting memory itself. You whisper names of those who stood with you in shadow, names you vowed to carry beyond chains. The soil yields easily as though grateful for sacred benediction. You curl fingertips into the loam, a ritual of renewal, a thrall's promise sown in soil. Returning to the longhouse yard, you hear the master's children calling across the open space, voices clear and unburdened. Their laughter echoes between walls where thralls toiled and rebelled. You smile, recalling how once you carried lice-infested straw beneath roofs no less loud. Now you carry the weight of stories of mothers' lullabies, midnight prayers, covert workshops, and thunderous revolt. In the quiet kitchen, you lift a small psalter, its leather cracked with age. You press it to your cheek, tasting both sacred text and soot. The old ferryman stands nearby, fingers tracing Latin letters he barely understands, each syllable a bridge between worlds. You join him in a whispered hymn, Old English, mixing with Old Norse, a tapestry of tongues woven by thralls turned storytellers. Later, you join the weaver at the loom, setting ivory chess pawns into carved slots on a decorative panel. Threads of gold and russet weave around runes and figures, each knot a nod to persistence. You hum a lullaby reversed, then forward, letting melody anchor you. Sagas drift in the workshop's air bards' voices, blending with shuttle's rhythm. You feel the living story unfold in fabric and flame. As dusk settles, you climb to your pallet once more, the runestone's contours still imprinted on your palm. You arrange spoons and bone tokens at your side, the tools of memory and craft that outlasted iron and brand. You press the rune spoon's handle to your heart, feeling its carved promise pulse beneath your tunic. Outside, the sea murmurs its own saga's waves, chanting an unending refrain. You close your eyes, listening, each crest a stanza, each trough a pause. You drift a thrall, no more but a keeper of stories, a storyteller bound only by truth and hope. And as sleep claims you, the rune stone's echoes hum beneath your dreams, a lullaby for the restless and the free alike, a final testament that while slaves may serve stories, endure beyond chains. Night drapes its velvet cloak across the land, and in the hush that follows you, feel each breath deepen into a gentle tide. The day's final embers flicker in the hearth, casting soft golden halos that dance across the timber walls. Your limbs, once bent by toil and burden, unwind in the room's warm embrace, sinking into plush cushions you could never have dreamed of under thrall's yoke. Outside, the moon sails above a silent sentinel over fields that grow dark and still. Its silver light filters through latticed windows, tracing pale paths on the floor like ancient runes, guiding your rest. Each pattern glows with echoes of runestone carvings, stories chiseled in stone, and heart whispered now in the quiet of your slumber. The scent of jasmine drifts in from the courtyard garden, mingling with the subtle smoke of embers dwindling in the grate. It wraps you in a soft benediction, the night's lullaby, weaving through your senses and coaxing away the final traces of fear. The tapestry of ceiling beams, once a ceiling of bondage, now arches over a sanctuary, where you may lay down your scars. In these moments between wakefulness and dream, you hear the distant lap of sea waves, a reminder of voyages past and a promise of journeys yet to come. Each wave breaks with the gentle assurance that night's trials yield to dawn's calm. You imagine sails unfurling in rose-lit skies, carrying you beyond the horizon of memory and into a new dawn unbound by iron. Your heart slows, settling into the rhythm of night's soft hum. Each inhale fills you with forged hope. Each exhale releases the final embers of struggle. You feel the tapestry of your life, the raids, the plowshare, the secret prayers, the revolt settle into a pattern of quiet resilience, secure in the knowledge that even the harshest chapter can soften in the glow of fireside tales. And as drowsiness enfolds you, the last whisper you hear is not of iron chains, but of gentle voices, lullabies, and sagas that outlasted walls and masters. You sink beneath the covers, carried on a velvet wave of remembrance and renewal, and in the waning light, you murmur your final thought stories. Endure, and so shall you. Good night.